Good evening, everyone. You are in the spotlight with Brian Gardner for this Thursday, June the 9th, 2016. Good to have you all here for our second of two shows this week. Apologies for the late start tonight between working my second job, and then there was a situation that arose upon my return home that had to be dealt with. It was kind of an emergency, urgent kind of situation. Everybody's okay. Nothing serious. Just something that was time. Um, was time sensitive that this had to be dealt with. So I do apologize for the late start tonight and for not informing you of that. We all knew it was going to be at least a 8:30 start, but obviously this is about almost 9:15 now, so I apologize for that. We do have a short show on tap for tonight. So I guess if we're gonna be late, this is the time to be late. Tonight, our entertainment show for this week, box office beat, TV highlights, and maybe a few entertainment news beats. It's going to be a very short show, so no need to worry about the fact that it's going to run late because it won't. So, as always, before we get going, let me remind you all the ways which you can interact and contribute to our show. Have your voice heard by emailing us at itspotlight411@gmail.com. You can also follow us and tweet us at itspotlight411. Please remember to use the hashtags, hashtag ITSpotlight411, hashtag ITS5, which of course represents the 5th anniversary on the air as a podcast. Or you can create your own hashtag. We're talking about movies, hashtag ITS movies, hashtag ITS TV. Or you can create your own. Have fun. Just don't be disrespectful or insensitive or or insulting. That's all we ask. We also encourage you to follow us on Facebook at our fan page. Just search for In the Spotlight 411 on Facebook. Make sure you like our page upon finding it. Again, this is going to be a very short show tonight. Entertainment on the entertainment side of things, box office beat, TV highlights, if any, and then a little entertainment news discussion. That's all we're going to really do. Next week we'll be back on track. There won't be any delays. We'll have two shows next week. Both starting at their usual time at 8 o'clock Eastern time. Next Tuesday, a sports entertainment combo show. Box office beat, TV highlights, any entertainment news we have to discuss, we will. Any sports headlines that we have to discuss, we will. Obviously, we'll talk about the NBA Finals, which all of a sudden became a series last night. We'll talk about that. I'm no longer so sure that we'll have a champion by next Tuesday, but still, we'll have that to talk about. And anything else in sports that we have to talk about, entertainment we have to talk about, we will. Then, of course, again, as I said, on Tuesday, next Thursday, an all-wrestling show previewing WWE's Money in the Bank pay-per-view. So if you want to submit questions or comments before the show, please do keep in mind you can also do that during the show next Thursday. But if you want to submit them before the show by email, Twitter, and Facebook, you may do that as well. Again, we'll do what we always do. We'll preview the pay-per-view, which in this case will be Money in the Bank. We'll go over the matches, all that good stuff, and then, of course, do questions and comments at the end of the show, and that will be next Thursday. Beyond that, the week after, we'll have an NBA draft preview special, and then do keep in mind that after the NBA draft, we'll also always have a post-draft analysis, that kind of deal, all coming up. So, more on that as we get closer to that event. My co-host Mike is on the line. Mike, you're in the spotlight. I'm not sure if you're in the spotlight. You look like you're frozen. Okay. I probably should change this to this. Sure. I just realized that my touch wasn't really on. Hopefully you all were able to hear me. Because I just realized my headset and stuff wasn't set up. So hopefully you all heard me. I think people seem to indicate that they were hearing me. So hopefully you did. And he's on the iPhone. Mike, you're now in the spotlight on your iPhone.
Yay.
Yeah. Thankfully, we're going to move quite quick tonight.
I would hope so, yes.
Yeah, we are. All right, so with all that being said, again, I hope you all, so far, everybody seems to have heard me. I didn't have my settings set to my headset, which is weird, but it looks like it got through okay, so that's good. All right, so one more quick little reminder. Those of you that do follow our fan page on Facebook, you'll notice that the link tonight had error. And usually you'll see the links and you'll see like a picture graphic. Well, the graphic never showed up. It just says error. Just ignore that. The links are still there. They're active. So no worries. I don't know why that happened, but it did. No matter how many times I put it in, it still happened. So just keep that in mind. All right. So we're going to start off with the box office. and we're starting to set up the. What are you doing?
Making weird eye and faces. So before I do this,
that look is a great personification of what a lot of box studio execs were doing last weekend when they're looking at the numbers. Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously we spent a lot of time last week talking about the fact that, in a lot of people's eyes, X-Men Apocalypse underperformed, even though I didn't think it was that much of an underperformance. And then, of course, we saw the great big flop that was Alice Through the Looking Glass, which obviously was a much bigger studio decline or situation there. So you have that going on. And that obviously was causing a lot of people in Hollywood to panic about the way that this summer was going. And then you come into what is usually kind of a lull weekend at the box office, and you see a comic book property in the form of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2, one that's a little softer than a lot of the comic book properties out there, but still a comic book property nonetheless. And that was a property that going into the weekend was already tracking softer than its predecessor, maybe due in part to the fact that its predecessor came out in August, and this one's coming out in first week of June with so much competition coming on the heels of Memorial Day. But you had that, and then there was a feeling of maybe this too will underperform. So there was that sense, and then you also had a couple other new releases that weren't expected to do much. One of which was one that was in far less theaters than anything else. That was Andy Samberg's movie Popstar Never Stopping, which of course was relying heavily on The Lonely Island's popularity, and only made $4.6 million. Again, this is a movie that never tracked very well. If it made $10 million, I think they would have been ecstatic. It didn't do that, but not really shocking, especially considering it was only in very few theaters. 2,311 theaters, so not a lot. And then you had another movie called Me Before You, which was a more of a romantic film, which was starting to track, starring Emilia Clarke and Sam Claflin, which was starting to track really, really, really good going into the weekend. And a $20 million budget, PG-13. It's been a long time since you had a romance movie at the box office, and it showed. The movie did very well. It's already up to $33.8 million. It brought in 18.7 over the weekend, which is a great third place strong finish for that movie. So if you're Warner Brothers, you're very ecstatic about that. You're going to make a good profit there. And then the two holdovers from last week, X-Men Apocalypse and Through the Looking Glass. Through the Looking Glass came in fourth, 11.3, a big drop off of almost 60%, which was expected. X-Men Apocalypse dropped even more, 65%, but X-Men movies are typically front-loaded. It still brought in $22.8 million. For a movie that many people think is underperforming, it's already up to $426.9 million worldwide. $124.4 million domestic, $302.4 foreign, and $178 million budget. So it's going to be fine. It's going to end up being more of an international success story than a domestic one. But we've seen that as a pattern a lot of times. Some summers have had that feel, and this one's kind of turning into that a little bit. So not a bad thing. Still made its money, Now, the big movie was going to be Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows. It had the biggest opening, 4,071 theaters. X-Men still had more theaters than that, which gives you an idea of how low it was tracking. Because if it was tracking decent, they wouldn't have had X-Men have more theaters than Turtles. So that gives you an idea right there of where they were tracking. Again, though, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, $135 million budget, came in with 35.3, which was actually a little more than where it was tracking, which I think was around 31. It's up to $79.6 million. It's got a $135 million budget. Its splits are pretty even, $44 million domestic, $35.5 foreign. It's I don't know how you perceive it. Obviously, if you're the studio, if you're Paramount, you might think of it as Maybe we should have released it at a different time. Maybe it was just asking too much for it to be in June. Although it is there isn't that much direct competition, but maybe there's just too much going on coming out Memorial Day weekend. They probably won't release it in June again. They'll probably wait till August again. But we'll see. I mean, I think the general feeling is that it will probably at least break even, and with the amount of merchandising and all that, I mean, it might end up making a little bit of a profit. Does that mean the franchise is done? Probably not. But we'll have to see. This one, the jury's still out because it really depends on how it holds in its second weekend, and that really depends on how things play. Right now, I don't have high hopes for how it's going to hold. But and outside of the Turtles and which again, based on how it was tracking, didn't really surprise us with its performance. I think if you look back at 2 months ago, you're probably disappointed if you're Paramount, but Me Before You was a success story this weekend. It surprised people. It did much better than people would have expected a few weeks ago. And, outside of that and what last week's two biggest holdovers, X-Men Apocalypse and Alice Through the Looking Glass did, you had Angry Birds come in at fifth with 10.2 million, which is a good hold. Captain America Civil War continued to hold 7.8 million, hold strong. And you had Neighbors 2 at 4.8 million, 7. Jungle Book at 4.4 million, 9. So some of the movies that have been holding strong. I mean, Neighbors 2 didn't have a great opening, but it's held okay over the last few weeks. So, but you have Captain America, Angry Birds, Jungle Book. They've been holding strong. I think you have to be pleased if you're Fox with X-Men. I mean, the overseas take is pretty much helping is negating the domestic take. So doesn't matter how you make the money. All that matters is that you make the money. So that's really, I mean, there's not much you can say about last weekend. We already went into the weekend thinking that Turtles was going to underperform compared to what we all thought 2 months ago. Now, does this mean that the studio should continue to panic? No, because I think generally you just was expected what happened on Memorial Day weekend happened or not. Now, we'll see what happens this weekend. And also with Finding Dory. How the rest of June plays will give us an idea of how July and August will play. If we see a lot more underperformance in June, then there's reason to be concerned about the summer. But if we don't, if it's just kind of an ebb and flow kind of thing, then that's no different than any summer, really. I think last year kind of spoiled people. We had so many movies break box office records, and now it's kind of, I think people have higher expectations than they need to be, but we've discussed that. So before we move on to what's coming up this week, Mike, any thoughts on the fun that was last weekend at the box office?
There wasn't a whole lot of fun at the box office. There wasn't really that much to talk about other than Me Before You doing really, really well. But if you think about it, when was the last time we had a really good romance kind of movie at the box office?
Quite a while, and this one's not Nicholas Sparks, so.
No, yeah, so I don't know. I can't say it probably had a decent ending, but when was the last time there was a romance movie? Like a solid non-Nicholas Sparks romance movie. So the audience is there, and it did well. Ninja Turtles did what it was going to do. It didn't do terrible. It didn't do great. It's still got a ways to go, both internationally and domestically, to make its budget back. And I don't know if it's going to do that. Well, it will make its budget back, but because it hasn't opened everywhere yet.
Mm-hmm.
But it started weak. X-Men's going to do fine. X-Men's already doing fine. Alice, okay. Alice is an issue for Disney. The company with the top 3 worldwide movies this year. Disney's probably going to write this one off, but it kind of, it does raise questions, and the big question is why did they wait so long in this movie? It should have been out 3 years ago. I think everybody realizes that this movie should have been out 3 years ago.
Right.
3 years later, the audience just isn't there. Are they going to have this issue with Pirates of the Caribbean 5? Hard to say. Pirates is a more established franchise, but it's been a while. So, excuse me, I'm pulling a U tonight. Civil War is hella amazing. Pop Star Never Stop Popping. Never Stop Never Stopping. Pop Star. You know what? I was actually interested in this movie. I don't even know if it came out here. I know we had the poster for it.
It did come out here.
It did come out here. I was interested in seeing it. It's just not enough time. Unfortunately, this was a movie I was interested in. Pop Star Never Stop Never Stopping. Much like, I don't know, The Lobster looks interesting, but I don't know if I'd actually go see that. But you know, so many movies, so little time. Hopefully, I'll catch Pop Star Never Stop Never Stopping somewhere down the line. Never lining. I don't know. There wasn't a whole lot to talk about. So, my opinion, anyway.
It's now you brought up a good point. That's going to be something that we definitely, I think, going into next summer we'll be talking about is what's going to happen with Pirates, because I mean the fourth one we talked about a lot when On Stranger Tides came out. It did much better internationally than it did domestic, and a lot of people took that as a sign that the franchise was starting to get. It was starting to wear out a little bit, you know. It was starting to feel like the impact of, you know, people just kind of like, okay, I've had enough. Let's leave it alone for a while. But then if we leave it alone for a while, people forget, and it really is a difficult kind of thing to balance. We'll see. It'll be a storyline for next summer for sure. Now this weekend is perhaps one of the most interesting weekends of the summer, because all three of these movies have the potential to be number one this weekend. The general sense is that all three are going to do well. They're all opening in over 3,000 theaters, around 3,000 or over theaters. Okay, they're all tracking about what they're all track. Maybe all but one is tracking what you'd expect it to. But the one that I am saying that is not tracking the way we expect it to is one that I think could be deceiving. Let's talk about that one first. That movie is Warcraft, a fantasy film from Universal, opening in 3,400, obviously based on the World of Warcraft game. You know, starring Ben Foster, Paula Patton, Dominic Cooper, and Tony Cabell. It's already made $168.6 million overseas. It's done very well in Japan.
No, you don't say.
Yes, it has. It's a $160 million budget. It's already over that worldwide. So regardless of how this does here, it's going to be okay. This movie's already going to do well, and it's going to get a sequel. This is the movie that if you've been following it for the last few years, everybody's like, okay, this is going to be a big hit in the summer. Might not break records, but it should be like a guaranteed $300 million domestic kind of movie. But then over the last couple months, you've seen a lot of people back off. That, like, I don't know. I think it's going to be more of an international hit, which, again, that's not a bad thing. It doesn't matter how you make your money. But it's, and then you started seeing signs last week that it's tracking towards maybe 30, 35 million based on how the last few weeks have gone for X-Men and then for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. There's a feeling that people are just going to wait until the end of June, July for a lot of their summer movies. So generally, a lot of people are being very cautious with this one and thinking 30 to 35, maybe 40 is about the max that you're going to see Warcraft get, which should be good enough to get it first or second place. I tend to agree with that. I would go cautious and say 30, 35 million. But I will say this, the tracking could be very deceiving on this movie. Because I almost get the feeling that this is one of those movies for some reason that people, a lot of tracking is based on, it's kind of like politics with exit polls. You're surveying people for some of it, and then some of it is just advanced tickets from Fandango and all this other stuff. So it's not a guaranteed tracking thing. We've seen instances where the tracking things have been way off. This could be one of those instances. I would not be the least bit surprised if this movie surpassed expectations, especially if word of mouth is good and does 50, 60 million and takes first place easily. Would not surprise me in the least. But again, if you're looking at this, I think you do play it cautious and go maybe around 35 million or so as a way to kind of make sure you're just not going crazy about it. Because right now, it's just going out on a limb if you think it could do better than that. Now, the second biggest release is a horror film, The Conjuring 2 from Warner Brothers. That's opening in 3,343 theaters. R-rated, $40 million budget, directed by James Wan. Francis O'Connor, Patrick Wilson, and Vera Farmiga are back. There's a lot of people that think this is taking number one this weekend. Wouldn't surprise me. It would not surprise me. This is a lot of people, one of their favorite horror movies of the last few years. There's a feeling that it's just, it's waited just about the right time. There's an anticipation. It's been well marketed. If you think back to the first one, it scored very well with critics. It brought in $41.8 million its opening weekend. Very good reviews for this one. A lot of people think it could do a similar number, which would eke it past Warcraft. If you assume it's going to track the way it's tracking. So I think if you're thinking 45 million for The Conjuring 2, then I think that's a fair assessment. Could it do lower and surprise people? Yeah, but I don't think it will. So it's going to be interesting. And then that leaves you with the third biggest release, Now You See Me 2. The sequel to Now You See Me, which was, if you remember a couple years ago, was my sleeper pick for the summer. Ended up doing very, very well. Didn't have a big opening weekend, but kind of hung in there over the few weeks. This is a thriller movie from Lionsgate Summit, and PG-13, opening in 3,232 theaters, which is interesting. I thought I'd get more theaters than Conjuring, but Conjuring, I think, got a bigger audience. This is directed by John Chu, starring Mark Ruffalo, Woody Harrelson, Jesse Eisenberg, Dave Franco, Morgan Freeman, Michael Caine, Daniel Radcliffe in this one, as well as Lizzie Kaplan. It's already made $2.1 million worldwide. Look, anybody that saw the first one's probably going to see the second. Daniel Radcliffe might bring in a few more things. It's going to do probably exactly what the first one did. It's going to be kind of like a middle-of-the-road hit, and that's what it's supposed to do. It's small budget, middle-of-the-road hit. It's not getting as good reviews as the first one did, but I think it'd be more than happy to settle for third place, probably 25 to 30 million, and that's a good number for it. It might do a little better than that. Some people think it could pass Warcraft and do better than that. That could be potential too. I don't put a lot of stock in that. I really do think Conjuring 2 and Warcraft have a little bit more going for them than Now You See Me 2 does, although they've had a really good ad campaign. Either way, because all three of these movies, none of these movies are going to flop, okay? Because all three of these movies are going to do at least decent. You're looking at a number one movie that's probably going to be in the $40 to $50 million range, and then number two and number three will be somewhere between 25 and 40 million. That's generally what you're looking at, which is going to be a great weekend for the box office because that's balance. Outside of those three, any one of those three I mentioned could be number one. I tend to think it'll be either Conjuring 2 and Warcraft at 1 or 2, and then Now You See Me in third. But again, it could be any which way. They could all be. You could change the order any which way you want, and it wouldn't surprise me. Outside of that, I expect Turtles to drop pretty hard. I think if you're Paramount, you're really hoping it doesn't drop past 18 million. If it doesn't, then I think you're okay, and I think the long-term future of the franchise is still okay. If it drops below that, then I think you have reason to be concerned. X-Men, I expect to be around 10 million, which is not going to be bad for it. Alice will probably drop below 10. Me Before You, we'll see. Those movies tend to be very front-loaded. Wouldn't surprise me if that drops under 10 as well. And everything else should drop either to near 5 million or below it. That's why I see it. So, Mike, anything about this weekend's box office?
In the interest of time and space, I want to see Now You See Me 2, and that's it.
Excuse me. Oh, wow. That's what happens when I hiccup a little bit here. All right. And by the way, I have to make a correction. Warcraft did not. It wasn't Japan that Warcraft did well, and it was China. Its box office has topped $90 million in 2 days in China. So I want to make sure I make that correction. I'm sorry about that. All right. So now we move on to the TV highlights of the week, and I'm gonna chicken out because and that's probably gonna save us some time because I didn't watch anything this week. Nothing new. Mike will hate me because I didn't watch Person of Interest this week. I haven't got to it yet. So I'm actually going to do that tonight, I think, because there's no NBA on tonight. So that's probably going to be my late night TV viewing tonight. So I'll get to that tonight, but I'm sure he'll cover it more than likely for me. So, yeah, so I really haven't watched anything this week. I've been so busy with work and everything else. I haven't had a chance to check that out. So I don't have any highlights, but Mike, go ahead. You have any TV highlights for the week?
Here's a little bit of a surprise. I haven't really watched anything this week either.
Oh,
I have Person of Interest sitting there. Like you, I have been exceedingly busy this week. I really haven't had that time. I mean, usually I find some time to watch things I give a shit about. This week has not been that week. This week really hasn't been this week. I wanted to watch Person of Interest a couple of days ago on Tuesday, but I was stuck in meetings until like 2, and then I had to go right to work. And when I came home, when the option was there, my answer was, and then I had to do this stupid show. So no, I couldn't have watched Person of Interest. Wednesday, I was out doing about a dozen things. I couldn't watch it. Today, well, I'm stuck doing this stupid show. So hopefully I'll get a chance to see it within the next couple of days. However, I have been watching a bunch of clips from Beyond Scared Straight. And I don't understand why I have been watching so many of those clips. They are fascinating. It is or was a show on A&E. Featuring troubled youths being put in a program. This program would involve them going into jail to meet real life inmates who give them real life details and what'll happen to these real life youths if they end up back in jail. And well, most of them apparently have at least turned their lives around a little bit. Some of them ended up back in jail, and I would guess that what those inmates had previously said would come true. And they were very vivid.
Yeah.
Descriptions.
I'm sure.
I don't watch this show on the regular. I've only kind of caught it on clips here and there. It's a fascinating show. It really is. It's like Lock Up almost.
Oh.
I used to see. I didn't watch Lock Up so much. It was on, and sometimes I'd watch it if I had to work a night shift, and that's after they ended the To Catch a Predator marathon. Which I miss. Thanks, MSNBC. You took off for To Catch a Predator marathons, and you took off Keith Olbermann. How could you? I guess I have yet to watch Person of Interest. The only other thing I would suggest is that watch if you have HBO, watch Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. I don't have HBO, so I've been watching it other ways. But he just gave away $15 million in debt, taking on the debt industry. So, and that was worthwhile. John Oliver is always a great watch. You always feel smarter after watching his show. So go watch Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. So, I mean, next week I'm going to probably talk about how the last 2 episodes of Person of Interest were intense and crazy, because I know this week a couple of people returned. I know this week that Finch had to make a really, really huge decision. I know that this week involved Reese, Shaw, and Fusco, and it's awesome to have to say Fusco is now an official member of the team, even though it came at a cost. Poor Root and Elias. But the fact that Reese, Fusco, and Shaw had to go save none other than the President of the United States from Samaritan, it's like the show has gone absolutely nuts. And I think they're taking steps. We have 2 episodes left after this. And then we unfortunately have to say goodbye to one of the greatest shows of this era. And I don't know. We're coming to a finale, and I'm hoping that none of the people who haven't died yet, like Reese and Fusco and Finch and Shaw, I hope they don't die. That is all I'm hoping. Jonathan Nolan, Greg Plageman, I'm hoping, I'm calling out to you. Don't kill off Reese or Finch or Fusco or Shaw. Please.
You're really gonna do that to a Nolan? Really?
Well, I don't mean to spoil, but they just killed off one of the big fan favorite characters. Oh, okay, 2 of the big fan favorite characters.
I know.
2. What more do you want?
It's the Nolans, man.
They didn't kill off Batman.
No,
I'm not spoiling. I am spoiling The Dark Knight Returns. However, what the hell? You've had about 4 years or 5 years to catch up.
They killed him, and then it was a presumed dead kind of thing. So but
he's still alive in Italy with Catwoman because that's canon now.
Hey, all right. So it's gonna suck when that show ends, really. All right, and speaking of shows ending, I mentioned in the show description that there was a few entertainment news pieces to talk about, and honestly, this is not my doing because I looked around. There's really nothing that's pressing that really needs to be talked about. But I promise people, we usually like to do 3 segments a show if we can. And the only 3rd segment we can do that time would allow is to look at some pieces of entertainment news. I couldn't find anything, but thankfully a couple of you, our lovely audience members, emailed me some things over the last couple of days of interest to me. And this shows you how busy I've been, because usually I'd be up to snuff on these things, but I wasn't. Well, 2 things, and they both kind of tie back to ABC and some of their cancellations. 2 of their shows, at least one of them looks like it's about to be confirmed to be picked up by another network. Another, there's hope that it could be. The one that's looks like it's about to be confirmed is Nashville, which was canceled by by ABC, pardon me, a couple of weeks ago. It's looking like it's going to end up on CMT, which makes a lot of sense. Perfect.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's a perfect fit. It's got a built-in audience. Yeah. It does very well on iTunes. I mean, you can't get any better than that. And it left everything on a cliffhanger, so good for their fans. Look, I kind of assumed that that show would get picked up by somebody because of the fact it has the additional revenue stream, just like Glee did, of putting songs on iTunes, and it has a lot of these celebrity cameos. There's value in it. So it just has to go someplace where it can be cultivated. ABC just didn't. And honestly, I think ABC did it a disservice by putting a show like that on at 10 o'clock at night. I understand that there's aspects of it that, are adult content and everything. But at the same time, I think, if you really want to expose it to a bigger audience, putting it at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday night wasn't going to do it. So hopefully CMT does better for it. I'm not really a fan, but hopefully they do better for it and put it on, at 9 o'clock would be perfect for it, in my mind. They can do that. Now, this one's more of a rumor that's starting to gain a lot of traction, and you've heard some people talking about the fact that it could happen. And this is Gallivant. There is talk that Gallivant will end up on either Hulu or Netflix. There's been a lot of speculation. The actors have kind of they're hoping, they've hinted. There's a feeling that Gallivant would work well on Netflix or Hulu because of the fact that a lot of time when ABC did air it, it was always in such a short time span. They'd do 2 episodes a week, and they'd play 8 or 10 episodes out in like a month's time. They think it's a good binge watching show. They think it would help it. So there's a feeling that this could work. ABC has stock in Hulu, so that could be a nice little connection. So it's right now it's a lot of rumors. Showrunner John Holberg and Chris Koch is the executive producer and series director. They've all been open about planning for the 3rd season and putting it on a different platform. So the possibility is there. It is gaining traction. I've seen a lot of talk about it. A couple people that I talked to on some message boards that have been right about some things in the past say it looks like it's going to happen. It's just a matter of which platform it is. So if you're a Gallivant fan, and I think that I do agree. I think it would work very well for binge watching, especially since it's only a half-hour show. If it does 10 to 12 episodes, you get through them pretty quickly. It works very well as a binge watch. And if they're smart, they can even release it in January, right around the time ABC always aired it. So I mean, they could coordinate that if they want to. I think it would work great. The actors all seem excited about it. I think it'd be, and I do think it's a very good possibility. Obviously, Michael, you would be happy about it.
I'd be ecstatic. There's also talk that Amazon is interested in it.
That wouldn't surprise me either.
It might actually get Gallivant season 1 and 2 on Amazon, like physical copies. That would be nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, like Gallivant, the streaming networks. I thought maybe Disney would give it to Freeform.
Yeah.
And keep it on television and kind of give it like a new home. Freeforms obviously could use another thing that gets people watching outside of all of their teen drama shows.
Right.
Like all of the teen drama shows. I don't know what this last one was about, but it was about something, I'm sure, involving teenagers and dead friends and pregnancies and all that jazz. Whatever. So I thought it might have been on Freeform, but you know what? The Netflix and Hulu makes sense. It might actually make me get a Hulu membership. I don't give 2 shits about Hulu, but hey, I could watch Gallivant season 3, and then I could watch Tommy Wiseau's The Neighbors.
There's some
We have
value.
not yet seen that. We have not yet seen that. And I do not know why, because I guess we're just horrible people.
One of
Horrible people who don't want to watch. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
One of our audience members actually sent this to us, and they wonder if it might play a role in it. I think it's a good point. You know, with Disney recently making that big deal with Netflix, where all their movies are going to be released on Netflix, and then they're going to have that deal where all the new films come out on Netflix, like 3 months after or whatever.
Yeah.
With Disney making that deal with Netflix, I wonder if that tilts Netflix as the favorite to get Gallivant.
It could be. It could be. Gallivant's got it's got a passionate fan base. I don't know how big it is, but it's got a very passionate fan base.
That's why it's going to work well online, because that fan base is pretty tense.
So they could stream, and then I think more people have access to Netflix than they do Hulu.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to finish it off by saying, for the love of God, I hope Netflix gets it.
Right.
Because I have access to Netflix, and I like Netflix a little bit. I don't use it as often as I should, but Netflix is a worthwhile investment. I'm just saying, and I really hope Gallivant ends up on it.
It's
I really do, because that's a show that deserves new life.
It's really funny to me that so many of ABC's cast-offs are getting picked up, or look like they could be. I firmly
Meanwhile, ABC doesn't know what they're doing, so
I firmly expect Agent Carter to get picked up.
oh, Agent Carter's probably going to end up on Netflix.
I firmly expect it because she's been outspoken about the fact that she'll do it. So, she's also been outspoken about a few other things. Haley Atwell. She's apparently made her opinions known about Steve Rogers' Hydra, and then she's of course made her opinions known about Sharon Carter and Steve Rogers. But
what? That nobody likes the Hydra Steve Rogers now?
Well, she made a point to say that she said, well, Peggy doesn't deserve Steve. Steve doesn't deserve Peggy after being revealed as Hydra, which I guess is her playing to her character, you know. But the bigger thing was that she made some candid points about, one of which I agree with. She said that, you know, seeing Captain America: Civil War, this is a kind of a spoiler, so if you haven't seen it, she mentioned that she kind of thought it was in poor taste that Steve and Sharon kissed so quickly after Peggy's funeral. She thought that was a little too quick. And then she said that she thought the Steve and Sharon Carter romance was incestuous.
Steve and Sharon Carter have been comic, that's been one of the major comic relationships for the past 40 years.
Right.
I thought. I could be wrong about the dates, actually.
You're pretty accurate about that.
So I'm not so happy. I'm not on board with that one. However, I am on board with the fact that nobody likes Hell Hydra Steve.
Yeah.
not even the guy who plays Steve Rogers. So
I'm not on board with the Hydra thing. I do see her point about the funeral thing. I think they probably should have somehow got to the kiss before the funeral.
Yeah.
That way, you could have made the argument, well, it happened before the funeral and he already has feelings for her, so it doesn't kind of, you know what I mean? It's just the placement, I guess. I can understand that. But you're right. I mean, the relationship is canon. It's in the comics. You can't really, there's no way to kind of not, if you're going to do the whole Captain America arc, there's really no way to do it. So, but again, I do feel like a lot of it is just her playing to her character. I think she's kind of just being, you know what I mean, funny about it. I think a lot of it's just being much to do about nothing. Because she does do that a lot, where she's at these events and she kind of oh, well, Peggy wouldn't do that. I mean, that she's very protective of the character, and that's kind of just what she tries to do. So, but anyway,
I mean, let's face it. Peggy Carter was one of those characters that was never huge in the comics.
No.
So she has made Peggy Carter something more. So I can understand why she'd be.
No, she has.
Yeah.
I mean, you think about it. She wasn't even. I mean, just being in that one movie, and then they got the one shot, and then they made a TV show for her. She's really taken off, and I don't think anybody had any anticipation that would happen. But
Sharon Carter came out in 1966. That was when her character debuted.
Wow. Like I said,
yes.
I think we all agree that there's always been this kind of icky kind of feel to it at times. It's been there. Everybody will admit that. But it is in the comics, and and the one thing you got to point out too, to be fair, is as far as the Marvel Cinematic Universe goes, all Steve did was kiss Peggy. He never did anything more with her. That's as far as the MCU goes, that's the way it is. So it's not like he was with Peggy intimately and then he goes and does the same thing with Sharon. It's not the same. It's not that kind of takes a little bit of the ick factor away if you really think about it. But anyway, I wasn't even trying to bring that up, but it kind of came up. So, but I do think Agent Carter's going to get picked up. And just if S.H.I.E.L.D. was canceled for some reason, they'd go to Netflix too, no doubt, because they're already on Netflix, so it makes sense. All right, so that's really all I wanted to get to, because a lot of you were asking about, we were bringing up the Gallivant point, and you were bringing up the Nashville point, so I wanted to make sure we got to those. Otherwise, we don't have anything else. So, We are done. I told you it was going to be short. It was short. So sorry about that, but that's, again, we don't like to go too long past 10 if we can avoid it. So with that being said, we are done for tonight. As always, just because the show is over does not mean you have to stop interacting or contributing to our show. You need to have your voice or send us your feedback, your questions about the show, scheduling the show, comments or reactions or questions about things we said in the show, things we talked about, reactions to things we said, topics we discussed. If you have topic ideas or breaking news items related to sports, entertainment, and wrestling you want to make sure we cover, you can send those in. All these things you do by email, Facebook, and Twitter. You can email us at itspotlight411@gmail.com. You can also follow us and tweet us at itspotlight411. Please remember to use the hashtags, hashtag itspotlight411, hashtag ITS5. That one, of course, represents our 5th anniversary on the air as a podcast. Or you can use create your own hashtag. If you're talking about something to do with wrestling, hashtag ITS Wrestling. Something to do with basketball, hashtag ITS Basketball. Something to do with movies, hashtag ITS Movies. Or you can create your own hashtag. Just don't be offensive or disrespectful or insulting. That's all we ask. You can also find us on Facebook. Just search for In the Spotlight 411 on Facebook and make sure you like our page upon finding it. We encourage you to follow us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest information about our show, especially as it relates to scheduling. I didn't really do a very good job of informing you all the time, but everything was kind of happening so fast. But normally I let you all know if there's going to be any unexpected delay or postponement. So that's why it's good to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. If you'd like to keep up with our show, maybe you're somebody that wants to check out old episodes, miss part of an episode, or miss an entire episode, whatever the case may be, you have a couple ways to do that. If you're somebody that's more a fan of streaming, seeing us on screen, and you're only interested in more of our recent episodes, which is basically anything from like Google Plus or YouTube, if you're only interested in those episodes, then search for In the Spotlight 411 here on Google Plus and YouTube. Again, search for In the Spotlight 411 here on Google Plus and YouTube, and you'll have access to all the episodes we've ever produced here on Google Plus and YouTube, everything from mid-October all the way up to tonight's episode. They're all on both sites here on Google Plus and YouTube. You can have access to all of them. So whether you missed a part of an episode or missed an entire episode, you want to check out any of those old episodes that pertain to Google Plus and YouTube. Again, it's everything from mid-October all the way to tonight. You'll have access to them. So you can find them here on Google Plus and YouTube. If you're somebody that's more a fan of audio podcasting, more or less listening to us instead of seeing us on screen, or maybe just want to listen to us on the go, or maybe you're more interested in older episodes of our show, whatever the case, you can check us out on our main host sites, Podbean and iTunes. To search for In the Spotlight 411 on both Podbean and iTunes. Again, to search for In the Spotlight 411 on both Podbean and iTunes, and you'll have access to every episode we've ever done. Anything from Blog Talk Radio, TalkShoe, Libsyn, iTunes, everything from our Google Plus YouTube run from October till now. All of it's been transmitted over to audio format. All of it is available on both Podbean and iTunes. So every episode we've ever done is in order from most recent to the oldest on both iTunes and Podbean. You have access to it all. So maybe you're a new fan that wants to get a sense of what we've been doing over the years. You want to look back at really old classic shows over the last 5 years, you can do that. Or maybe just a long-time fan that just wants to look back at old episodes, or whether you're just trying to keep up with recent episodes. Whatever the case may be, you can use Podbean and iTunes to do all that. Again, to search for In the Spotlight 411 on both sites, and you'll have access to all those episodes in audio form. Again, search for In the Spotlight 411 on both sites. And of course, again, Google Plus and YouTube if you're more interested in streaming and more interested in more of our recent episodes as well. And just search for In the Spotlight 411 on both those sites as well. So that's the ways which you can keep up and check out old episodes and all that good stuff. I want to thank Mike for being here tonight. Thank you, Mike.
Time for bed.
Thank myself for another great show. Pat myself on the back, and thank all of you for your continued support and contributions to the show. Thank you so much for watching. To those that might be listening at some point, thank you to you as well. Thank you so much for your patience here tonight. I appreciate it. That's it for this week. Again, next week, back on the air with 2 shows. We're back to our normal time. No late nonsense next week. 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, both Tuesday and Thursday here on Google Plus and YouTube. Tuesday, Sports Entertainment Combo Show. Box Office Beat, TV highlights. If any entertainment news has to be discussed, we'll do it. NBA Finals discussion. I'm assuming the series will still be playing on. I would think so anyway. And we'll be going up against game. Well, if there's a game 6, we'll be going up against it. So we'll see. Hopefully there is, because it makes the series go on longer and makes it more competitive. But we'll talk about the NBA Finals. Any other sports headlines we have to cover, we'll cover them. That'll be on Tuesday. On Thursday, an all-wrestling show previewing WWE's Money in the Bank pay-per-view. We'll go over the card, predict the matches, and obviously we'll address questions and comments at the end of the show. At time will determine how many we do. Again, if you want to submit questions or comments, you can do that before the show by Facebook, Twitter, or email. You can do it during the show on Thursday, again, by Facebook, Twitter, and email. So please do keep that in mind. And then of course, again, a week after, we'll do our NBA draft preview, and we'll get into all that as far as what's going to happen the week after next and beyond next week. So with all that being said, that is it for this week. I hope you all have a great rest of your night, a great weekend, and a great start to your week next week. We'll see you back here broadcasting and streaming live here on Google Plus and YouTube this coming Tuesday, June the 14th at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. Until then, have a good night, everybody.